Next up, we have Vishal. He is an avid researcher and a Rubik's Cube enthusiast who drives himself to become the best version of himself. He is a senior in Lawrence High School, and he aspires to be the inventor and businessman with an aim to make the future safer. Vishal is a high-ranking member of the STEM Club, Math League, International Alliance, Model United Nations, DECA, and the head of the New Jersey branch of Time to Care, a nonprofit organization devoted to free tutoring. When he's not working, you will see him passionately researching on topics including politics, innovations in the science and technology field, finance in the stock market, or playing a game of tennis. His speech topic is "Why do I believe them?" So Vishal, whenever you're ready, you can start your speech.
Jimmy is a 9th grader attending high school for the very first time. It is the opening day for his new life. He walks into school and sees his guidance counselor and school principal for the very first time and greets them. They then tell him advice on how to prosper throughout high school. Keeping that advice to heart, Jimmy attends his classes for the rest of the day and after school meets his coach for the very first time. Now, in Jimmy's day, how many people were there for the betterment of Jimmy and only Jimmy? How many people helped Jimmy in his life? How many people were there for Jimmy during this time? In this scenario, the teachers, the guidance counselor, the principal, and the coach, they were all there for Jimmy on his first day. These people are known as influencers. To explain influencers in detail, just think of this example. Think of a time where you had listened to someone speak, or you had read someone's writing and had blindly accepted what they had to say. Their words, their morals, their message. Whoever that person may be is an example of an influencer. Now, when I explained that term influencer, it might have had a negative or a positive connotation. But an influencer can be good or bad based on the message that they portray and the tools that they use to do so. Famous influencers include Cristiano Ronaldo, President Donald Trump, Tupac, or Bill Gates. Each of these influencers use their status and certain tools to spread their message into the world. Cristiano Ronaldo, as an example, is the embodiment of an influencer. He endorses a certain brand, and then his followers buy that brand's goods because of the sheer fact that Ronaldo had endorsed it. You see, what happens when people start to follow a certain influencer is very simple. Influencers spread their words, their morals, their message into the world, and people's own morals are created based on that. And in the end, actions are determined. Influencers spread, morals formed, actions determined. This is the step that is happening in society today. President Donald Trump spreads his message into the world. Americans believe in that message, and in the end, Americans vote for him. Tupac spreads his message about police brutality into the world. Thousands of people agree with his ideas, and in the end, new rappers, new activists are created based on that. But do you believe that there is anything wrong with this system? I do. I have always asked myself, why? Why are my morals being dictated by someone else? Why are my actions being changed because someone else had told me to do so? Why is who I am being altered based on the words of another person? Is this wrong? I understood something different. I understood that my own morals, actions, and judgments should not be altered by an influencer, but should go out and seek an influencer. The system should work like this. A person should be firm to their morals, to their own judgments, and go out and seek an influencer that can help them better in that aspect. Cristiano Ronaldo as an example. He endorses a certain brand and his followers buy that brand's goods. Why not the other way? Why can't people buy that brand's goods because of the sheer fact that they liked it, not because someone else had told them to buy it? Cristiano Ronaldo, as well as thousands of other influencers in this world today, use certain tools to spread their message. The most common, most impactful tool is the media. Media including social media and mainstream news. There are two tiers that influencers can lie in. The first tier is the influencer tier, and the second tier is the so-called God tier. In the influencer tier, there are thousands of influencers, and most of them are not political. The biggest example of those who are not commonly heard of are doctors, researchers, and scientists. When there is an issue relating to the biology of humans, doctors, researchers, and scientists are the first ones to call. They spend thousands of hours in the laboratories, at the hospitals, to try to find a cure or try to find a way to mitigate some issue. We believe them in their efforts because they are doctors, because they are researchers, because they are scientists, because they are in that influencer tier. But the tools that they use to convince us are far different than any other tier. Doctors, researchers, scientists use facts, credibility, ethos, data to prove to us that their information is real. We believe them in their efforts because they are part of that influencer tier. Think of what is happening right now. Doctors, scientists, and researchers are spending thousands of hours in the labs and in the hospitals to try to find a way to cure this virus or ways to mitigate this virus. We again believe them in their efforts because they are not self-interested in their cause. They're doing it for the betterment of society. Now, this may seem very big picture, but there are thousands of influencers in our everyday lives as well. Imagine a time you had an encounter with the law. You were being pulled over by a police officer, and he comes to the window and asks you for your driver's license and registration. Do you give it to them? Yes, you give it to them because you believe in them. You believe in their words, their morals, and their message. They are bound by law. But this is far different than if a random person on the street was to ask you for your driver's license and registration. Would you give it to them then? No, because they are not in that influencer tier. You do not believe in their morals, words, and judgments, but you do believe in that police officer. The same situation goes for judges. If you're sitting in front of a judge, that judge will tell you the facts because, again, their words, their morals are bound by law. In the end, people who are in that influencer tier are not self-interested in their cause. However, there is another tier that influencers can be in. In this tier, I call their believers soldiers for the influencer's cause. This is a tier that few people don't even know exists. This tier I call the God tier. For the pure fact that in this tier, the influencers start to believe that they are God themselves. The most common example of people who are in this God tier is politics. The Democratic and the Republican Party are the greatest examples of those who are in that God tier. They use the media to portray their message to the world. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects the media and the use of it, but it does not protect against media bias. These parties use the media bias to spread their message. Don't believe me? Let's talk facts, real facts, not the truth, not a version of the truth. According to an independent study of political science experts, at Ivy League universities, CNN, MSNBC sit left on the political spectrum, meaning that their words, their morals, their message, whatever they might be, amplify that of the Democratic Party and only the Democratic Party. Fox News, on the other hand, sits far right in the political spectrum, meaning that their words, their morals, their message, whatever they might be, amplify that of the Republican Party and only the Republican Party. They are biased. Now, people might be asking, I am a Republican, so what's wrong with watching Fox News? Or I am a Democrat, so what's wrong with watching CNN? I am telling you something completely different. You are telling me that you are a Democrat, which compels you to watch CNN. I am telling you that because you watch CNN, you ended up becoming a Democrat. You telling me that you are a Republican, which compels you to watch Fox News. I am telling you that because you watch Fox News, you ended up becoming a Republican. The system needs to change. Why? Why am I stressing this so much? Because it is just based on one thing: your thinking. If your thinking is altered based on the words of another person, it is no longer your thinking. If your morals are changed based on what another person says, it is no longer your morals. If your actions are altered based on the words of another person, it is no longer you driving yourself, rather someone else driving you. Famous influencers are also famous people in this God tier are prominent in sports. LeBron James, as an example, is a famous influencer in this God tier. Due to the recent Black Lives Matter protests all over the country, thousands of protesters had been burning the American flag. And as a result, Drew Brees, who's a prominent football player for the New Orleans Saints, went against this on social media, saying that burning the American flag is wrong. But since LeBron James, who is that prominent sport athlete in the God tier, went against Drew Brees, thousands of other people followed him in his efforts to prove that Drew Brees was wrong. Thousands of athletes, hundreds of other people came together and followed LeBron James in his efforts. In the end, Drew Brees had to rescind his statement and give a formal letter of apology to the Black community. Analyzing this situation, you just see one thing. LeBron James, who is a famous sport athlete in that God tier, said his statement. And in the end, thousands of people followed him, regardless of the facts. Well, what is the fact? Drew Brees has had a major military family background. And to him, burning the flag is disrespectful to the military, hence his comments. But since the world rallied around LeBron James in his effort, Drew Brees had to rescind his statement. Now, why? How do I choose who to believe in? Why do I believe in them? Am I supposed to be firm to my morals and go seek out an influencer? Or should I let my morals be altered by an influencer's words? The answer is both. And to really understand this, you have to classify everyone you meet in one of those two tiers. If they are doctors, scientists, researchers, teachers, who are not self-interested in their cause, it is okay to believe in them. But if there are individuals like sport athletes or politicians, you have to be careful because they are in that God tier and they are self-interested in their cause. Everyone's opinions matter in society, but everyone's opinion is just an opinion. It is not the fact. That's why you need to understand why you believe in that person. And based on that, you need to build on yourself. Because if you classify everyone you meet in one of those two tiers, it is only beneficial for you. You can take charge in situations rather than waiting for someone else. You can create new ideas rather than waiting for someone else. You can become an influencer yourself. Thank you.
Vishal, your speech was a great example of the power held by influencers and social media. It's actually very alarming to see how much trust we hold in the media. Now I'd like to invite any judges to ask or give any comments to Vishal. And also, as another reminder, the audience is more than welcome to use the chat function or the Q&A functions to ask any questions as well.
So I'll jump in if you don't mind to start. First of all, you took a difficult topic. I'll give you credit for taking that on. If you're an influencer and you can positively influence people, then is the reverse true that if you're an influencer who is negatively perceived, you'll drive them away?
No, because if you pretend you are an influencer and let's say in society you have kind of negative remarks, right? But I would still believe you in your efforts because of the tools that you use. What we as individuals need to do is to distinguish ourselves between those two types. Like, are they self-interested in their cause or are they not? Because if you do that, then you'll understand realistically who you should believe in.
But you can lose the concept of being an influencer, or can you not? So if you become an influencer, is that something you're going to live with, or can you minimize that influence by doing things that aren't well perceived by your followers?
Yeah, if you go against your followers' kind of own morals, like complete polar opposite, you can lose it. But typically, influencers in that God tier, like the top tier, their people are kind of following them regardless of their words. It happens a lot in, for example, the sport athletes, the example I posed, and with politics. Whatever the person says, usually their followers still believe them, regardless of if it's negative or positive in society.
So just one last step on the political side. Can you be an independent influencer? So if you're an independent individual in that you don't follow either the Democrats or Republicans, but you're an independent, can you be an independent influencer?
Yeah, you can. There are a lot of people who are independent in their beliefs, but still have a major following, right? Let's take Bernie Sanders as an example, right? He's not fully a Democrat. He's considered an independent. He's a social democrat, but he's still an independent. His following is large. He's still someone that's considered in that God tier because all of his followers accept what he has to say.
Okay, thank you.
Vishal, is the power of the influencer, is it very transient? When time it passes, then people follow others.
Typically,
and is it and also the follow-up of the second part of that, is it necessarily related to the morals, or there are other factors that make people follow?
It is typically the morals, because when you are following someone just based on their words or their message, right? You align with them in your own opinion or morals. Let's just say you're following artist in their words, right? You are following them because you align with their message as a person.
Let's take the example of the cop. You mentioned that you have to give the registration and license to them because you believe in them. Do you have a choice if you didn't believe them that you don't have to show your license and registration?
Well, theoretically, yes, today in society. That's why I was saying today in society it's so important. Because as you see all over social media or the news, a lot of people resist the cops, right? Which is the major issue that's happening. But since you do believe in them, I'm assuming, since we do believe in them, we do give our driver's license registration. To us, they are in that influencer tier because they're bound by law.
Okay. How do you differentiate influencer from a role model? Or are they the same thing from what you're
They're typically the same thing. Like a role model, we build on them. So we take certain aspects of their life and we build on ourselves, which is typically what an influencer does, right? We follow an influencer because we like them in their words, and then we build on ourselves based on that. It's pretty much the same thing.
So do people always seek out role models, or sometimes it just falls into your lap? You read some biography of a leader or any other figure, uh, uh, and you are inspired by that person.
Yeah, you can definitely it can just happen one day. So in that situation with the police officer, right? If that person came to the window, but for a small kid, he could have seen the police officer, and for him, that could have been his role model. It's just happenstance, really, with that.
Thank
So
you.
Vishal, I have a, sorry, Dr. Makija.
No, I'm
Sure.
done. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so here is my observation. When you started off your talk, my first question was, why will I believe you? And and after hearing your well-presented research ideas, and you took a rather challenging subject. I mean, I would be scared of this subject, but you took it on, and you presented and arguments and counter arguments, and went along, and you are persistent enough to prove your point. So yes, I do believe you now.
Thank you.
So here is my comment on this, and this is probably a little bit extending to what Peter was saying, maybe from the other side of the coin, that yes, you can. It's people do get influenced by everybody else and everything, but conversely, you can have a built-in negative influencers or situations like that, and then we might end up becoming a 1984 society. So just like in the book, the way that he has painted that idea of how we quote unquote get brainwashed and everything. So in your research, did you find across any mention of anything like that, and how will people know at what point I'm crossing the line of or going into a cult on one side, or the other side is I'm becoming a puppet and I have to do what I'm told?
So that major difference is based on the self-interest of that influencer. Like I said before, with the doctors, researchers, and scientists, right? What they're doing is for the betterment of society as a whole, or betterment of others, like teachers as well. But then you look at the other side, right, relating to politicians or famous sport athletes in their efforts, what they're doing is for their own beliefs, as for what their own message is. That's the clear distinction, right? As soon as you fall or go to a place where you as a person are no longer believing in your own morals, rather you're being changed by that influencer's, self-interested morals, that's where you move into that kind of cult aspect, which is why I was trying to stress it so much, to distinguish everyone you meet in one of those two areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Vishal. Thanks for taking on a provocative topic. I think it was really interesting to hear how you presented it. My question is really, around sort of the two tiers that you've presented, right? Do you think they're truly mutually exclusive? I mean, do you think there's a chance that you've got scientists, doctors who are also driven by morals, interpreting facts in ways which could be very different from one another?
Yeah, so in certain situations, doctors and researchers can actually have self-interest in maybe promoting a drug, or saying this is a cure, but that's the point where you have to figure out if they are self-interested or not, because if you do realize that, then you can actually distinguish yourself between them.
But how do I as an individual know that, right? Like I guess, are we all in a situation where we invariably turn to people who are subject matter experts in the instances we are not those ourselves?
Typically that's what happens in society, right? But to explain your question about how do you know that, you realistically, the best option is just research. That's it. You have to, Google is a huge research platform. All you have to do is research. It takes 10 minutes and you can really understand, is this of self-interest or not?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Vishal, we actually have one question from the audience. The question is, what changes would you see in society if people began to carefully evaluate the influencers that they trust?
So one major change I would see is more of differing opinions. Almost so in society today, we're kind of in the tribal nature, meaning that whatever, like if we have one opinion, then we know what the rest of the opinions we have. If we as individuals go out and distinguish ourselves from that influencer, we can actually, have our own morals and be firm to it rather than being adjusted by someone else.
Okay, cool. There's also one more question. How do you get other people to stop influencing you without seeming to hurt them?
If you're at a point where someone else is influencing you in the wrong direction, if it's in the right direction, you shouldn't go away from it. But if you're in that wrong direction, where that influencer is influencing you, you have to be firm enough to go against them, regardless of their feelings, because it is only negative for you.
And one last question. What about teen activists?
Usually teen activists, most teen activists use data and research to prove their facts, but in teen activists as well, make sure that what they're preaching is not something that's beneficial for them, rather than it's beneficial for society as a whole.